Welcome to episode 138 of Destination Linux. This is a podcast made up of the opinions of four of the greatest minds ever discussing our passion for Linux. I'm Michael, and with me today are the Power Rangers of Linux, Noah, Ryan, the birthday boy, and Zeb.
Yeah.
So Zeb, what's new with you this week?
It's a bit of a much of the same old, same old. I did a Gentoo stream yesterday, part 4 gaming, and we were meant to be installing things like CPU power, DXVK, eSync, and Lutris. Only it didn't quite go as well as we had hoped.
Oh, no.
And it just goes to prove that whilst Gentoo can be used as a daily driver, unless you really are a guru, there are so many more hurdles to overcome than, say, doing it on Arch or Ubuntu. It's just not straightforward. But what was really pleasing and what did shine through was the Linux community once again. So we finished the stream and we hadn't got anything set up properly, and it wasn't really a success. And then I get an email from what I can only assume is one of the Gentoo dev team, because I checked him out and his name appears on their Gentoo website as working on the Gen kernel and a couple of other products. And he went, "I'm glad I saw your stream because it reminded me of my to-do list." And I immediately thought of, is this the same sort of to-do list that Michael's got? Because we're in trouble. And he went, "So I need to actually patch Lutris because it's broken on Gentoo." So he sent me an email through to try this patch. So I immediately forwarded it to Serge, who's the guru. I'm just a monkey with a keyboard. And he went, "Well, wait a minute, because I think it might be coming into the portage tree." And I got another email this morning saying, "It's there, we've fixed it. Please try it and let us know on your next stream whether or not it fixed it." So whether you're Arch or Gentoo or Slackware or, Peppermint, the community just keeps shining through and through and through. So we'll have to see how it goes next time round.
That's very awesome to hear. I love that when you see those distros out there where the developers are paying attention to what's happening in the community and then engaging themselves to resolve the issue versus just ignoring it or sending an email, "Well, you clearly don't know what you're doing," or something that may have happened in the past in the Linux world. But when you see developers...
Drop a man page.
Yeah, read the man page and figure it out. When you see people engaging like that, you could tell it's truly a work of passion for them. And there they go in and fix it and take a frustrating moment. It's funny because I saw your streams of after it was done, and I was skipping through it to see when the gaming starts, because it said installing Gentoo and gaming. And I'm like, okay, where's the gaming? I want to see the gaming on Gentoo. But I didn't see any gaming. So I figured something had gone wrong during that stream.
Yeah, it was a lot of it was to do with the Lutris problem. Lutris was there. I download a game, fire it up, and then there'd be some obscure SRAST problem. And as I think the guy's name, I can't remember his whole name, but he's Henk, another guy from Belgium, I believe. Apologies if you're not. He was saying that, well, SRAST means it's using the software side of it, but I've got an NVIDIA card, so why wasn't it using the NVIDIA? So there's something, I think, wrong with the i386 drivers in this particular install, that it's not picking them up to play Lutris, but we'll see what happens when we get this patch in.
Very nice.
It was actually pretty cool with the proactive nature of the Gentoo developers as well, because like the things that we always say sometimes doesn't happen. Report a bug. Technically, a stream is not a reporting a bug, but if they're watching the stream, that is a very convenient way of reporting a bug.
Yeah, you get to see it, right? You get to see the video of it happening.
That's awesome. So, Ryan, how's your week been?
My week has been awesome until this random person called me to work on a machine. But before we get into that, because we'll get to you there.
Wow,
to find
I don't know
more
what you're
that.
talking about.
I have been taking some cybersecurity classes related to Security Plus certifications and things like that. But I was mainly trying out a different platform because I've played with Linux Academy, but I've also heard people talk about a training resource called lynda.com, which is associated now with LinkedIn.
Yes.
Which I think is associated with Microsoft at some point. It's like a whole daisy chain.
Microsoft owns LinkedIn.
So, but in any case, I wanted to try it out because one of the things that I was looking for was kind of a training platform that would spread across the entire spectrum of different software resources, operating systems, the whole gamut, for various things, whatever you're wanting to learn. And it's interesting. I don't think Lynda has everything perfect, but they definitely have a much bigger mixture of training out there, courses available the Security Plus stuff is just of particular interest to me. And of course, we have the North Georgia Coffee and Linux coming next weekend. So on Saturday, if you're in the North Georgia area, show up where we'll have Bo there. And we've done pen testing and things there with him live. We've also shown the ability to take over people's networks or spoof Wi-Fi networks. He did at the last event live within about 5 to 10 minutes. He had spoofed networks there. So people's connections dropped and jumped onto spoofed Wi-Fi. Of course, we got the owner's permission to test with just our machines, but just showing how easy it is to spoof people, how easy it is to overcome this. So I was hoping to gain some valuable insight in the security realm by taking it, not necessarily interested in the certification part, but just for my knowledge. And they have a really, really good trainer for the Security Plus stuff. So if you're interested in cybersecurity for any reason, check out the courses over there on lynda.com or the LinkedIn training now, but formerly lynda.com, because I think the trainer there specifically, at least for that course, is top notch.
So what was this computer problem you had, or is that for later on in the show?
We'll get to that, but first we have to get to Noah's what he's been getting himself into, because I want to learn. I want to know more about his experience, his journey with the Yalla YOLO.
What
did you?
What?
All right. Well, let me tell you
YOLO for Yalla.
About the Jalapeno phone here that runs Salient OS Fishy. Mitchell.
Well, anyway,
no, it's been going great, really. So I got a new case. The little flip case. Originally, when I bought it, I thought what I really want is a case that I can treat it like a little computer. Unfold it, unpack it, use it as an actual computer. And what I found is I just pulled it out so much that I was getting to the point where I literally wasn't using my Android phone. And so I went and purchased this case, which I really like. It has a little kickstand on it that comes out, and so the phone can set up. I like that. I like that it has a cutout for the fingerprint reader, which I'm not currently using. But yeah, still have Sailfish, and it's becoming more and more of a daily driver. So yeah, that's been going great. But one of the cooler things that I've done this week, do you guys remember when I told you about my bell system for my house?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
For anybody that doesn't remember, the short recap is this: my kid's school system has a bell system, and it's not like a traditional bell. It's actually just a tone that goes off at given times to let the kids know it's time for lunch, it's time to go to school, it's time to be done with school, whatever. And I thought that's an interesting idea, and so I implemented something similar in our house, just with the Raspberry Pi. And I would at the moment it was just playing a tone that was the similar frequency of their school bell to let them know that it's time to be done with breakfast and time to leave the house. Well, it turned out that worked way better than I thought it would, and I started to think to myself, I wonder if it works for the kids, if it would work for me. Because one of the things that I have trouble doing, as anybody that's been around me for more than 10 minutes has figured out, I'm terrible at scheduling. I'm terrible at planning time and budgeting time. And so what I did was I got a less obnoxious tone, a nice little notification, and I'm actually using a second Volumio device, because Volumio supports an API send. So you can use cron to send curl commands to the Volumio to play various files at various times. And so I have a file that plays that turns on the radio station or starts the radio stream when I wake up in the morning. And then at a specific time, it turns on the music I like to listen to when I go into the shower. So I know it's time to go into the shower. And then shortly after that, it turns that off and goes on to a different playlist that I have set up where I'm getting ready for the morning and making the kids breakfast and doing all that kind of stuff. And then finally something that tells me I have to get my butt out the door to get to my first client on time. And of course, that last one, because it's Linux, because it's just a cron job, because it's just a script, means I can tie that into our ticket system. So if one morning we have a ticket that isn't until 11 a.m., I won't get that notification until 10:30, and I hear it everywhere I am in the house, in the shower, out of the shower, in my bed, wherever. I know, hey, I've got a client engagement. I have to get out the door in the next 15 minutes because I have to go somewhere. It's been working great up until I went to Las Vegas and didn't have access to it. Now I've totally lost track of time and time. But it's really cool. And the fact, and this is what I mean, I really want people to focus more on buying and using technology with things that you can build rather than buying technology that you can use, right? Anybody can walk into Best Buy and buy the newest whatever, right? It takes a real geek. It takes real intelligence to go buy a Raspberry Pi motherboard and buy an SD card and buy a power supply and buy a case and buy an R receiver and buy a USB audio interface and download a software like Volumio and configure it, and then figure out the API and set up a second box that runs cron to do that, and then tie cron into whatever other things that you want to be able to automate. Those kind, building something that is cool and that is powerful and that teaches you about technology as well as making your life better, allowing you to improve on technology. And the great thing is, it's not using if then there if that it's not using some web service. It's just using local machines that I set up. Right. So nothing can take it offline.
That's what I love about that. And I love that point that you made there, because you don't have to start out at that level. Maybe people will sit hearing cron job and all this stuff and they're like, I don't know what that means. That's fine. Just go get the Raspberry Pi and start playing
with something with it.
Do something with it. And there are books in the bookstore. There are books on Amazon that are just like random Raspberry Pi projects. Start doing them. They're step by step. There are websites, YouTube tutorials, all this stuff to do it, and then build your skill up to where you can get to that point where you're like, now I have a problem and I'm going to solve it. In your case, scheduling. But go ahead.
To be clear, and I don't want to insult anybody, but when we say you can build up to using things like cron to send an API curl command to Raspberry, that should be like in the first 4 hours. You should progress to the point where you can learn how to use cron, because literally Google cron generator and take whatever that spits out and paste it into a text file. And now you've created a cron job.
Well, this is my little bell because it sits on my desk, and I keep seeing it every morning going, are you ever going to do anything with that?
Nice.
You keep talking to it. Do something. Become something.
No, but you tried it, and you saw what it was. You found the overheating problem, and like you've learned about technology because you've played with it. People don't do that.
And I bought myself a nice little case.
Yeah.
I still haven't put together yet.
Nice.
It looks really complicated. I mean, how is a Raspberry Pi meant to fit in that?
You'll get
that. You'll get there. That actually reminds me. It's kind of like the that his case with all those different pieces for a Raspberry Pi reminds me of your P5 with the desktop thing.
Oh yeah, the desktop. Yeah. It actually reminds me. I brought this LCD Raspberry Pi kit to my North Georgia and Coffee event, and I was like, hey, it'll be a fun event. We can build it. And Bo's son and my son and his son sat there and built the whole thing up. But as I was watching them build it, I thought, this is genius, because I don't want to have to have done this because there were so many. But anyways, the point is, yes, some of those kits can be a little daunting, but they're a lot of fun. But Noah, I am requesting that you, instead of having the bell sounds, you allow me and Michael and Zeb to record sound bites for the various things going on, like, it's time to eat breakfast, dummy, and things like that.
Like, hey, Noah, you got a client that's waiting for you.
Here's the thing. I refuse to take something that has been probably the most significant advance and improvement in my life in 10 years and let it get turned into a joke. However, I am not above trolling my family. So what we could do, you guys do that. You record each one of those clips. I will put it in, and I'll plant hidden cameras around the house as they go off and capture my kids and my wife's reaction as these various things. And I'm going to hold a straight face. Like, it's no big deal. Like, that's what we're using now.
That's just right.
Like, and the more obnoxious and the more irritating, like, so they're looking, they're like, you've got, because they already think I'm nuts, right? Like you can imagine the conversation when I sat down with my wife, and I'm like, so I want to expand the bell system. And she's like, here's what she said. She's like, I feel like sometimes in our marriage, like you just create these systems that you think are super important, and then I am left juggling them. Like the TV went from I just picked a channel and I could choose what I wanted to watch to now I have to turn on the Shield and open up Kodi and then connect to the server and then browse the media share. She's like, it's just a lot more steps. And she's like, so, with this bell thing, like, how do we control it? I'm like, well, there's no UI at the moment. Right now, you just have to SSH into the box if you want to change it. I'm working on that. It's going to come together. She's like, oh boy. So she's tolerating it right now because they're pretty gentle tones. Like, it's a very, very subtle thing, right? But like, I am not opposed to like Michael being like, we're late. We gotta hurry up.
No, Michael, you'll do your voice like, hey guys.
It'd be more like, hey Noah.
You're late for your client, Noah. You're late. Get on it.
Get on it.
You let us know what we got to record, and we'll send you the sound snippet.
All right. I gotta wake up. I'm gonna wake up to Zeb saying tickety boo.
I know.
Tickety boo. Time to start the morning.
Perfect.
My best Zeb impression.
So, Michael, what have you been up to?
Actually, quite a lot this week. I got some new hardware. Thankfully, if you see it in the screenshot or the thumbnail of this week, I showed up the Ryzen 7 2700X.
Yeah.
And this is, and also I got a new motherboard for that as well. Thanks to BC from my local Linux user group, he gifted the hardware to me for the production of the
Only
show
you,
and
man.
stuff.
Only
I
you.
don't know. I don't know. It's amazing. And he mentioned it one time. He was upgrading, and he was like, "Hey, would you like the old parts? They were going to be put in storage or something otherwise." And I was like, "Wait, what do you mean? You mean have it? You know?" It's like, "Yeah, if you just want it, I'll give it to you."
You
Like,
want me to give you, money?
yeah, it's like, you want to give me an amazing hardware gift? Like, yes, I will take that. That's
This
amazing.
guy is literally the Santa Claus of IT. Like, get AMD Ryzen 2700X, an X470 MSI Pro Carbon gaming motherboard, and DDR4 RAM.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. It's
Santa
amazing.
Claus, amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing. And it also, but because it was so much different hardware, it required me to rebuild my system. So I had to install a new distro, which I chose to be different this time and use Arch. So,
Sorry.
so I
Well,
installed.
you screwed up.
I installed Arch, and it didn't take that long to install Arch because I used ArchFi, which is a really nice Incurses installer. You still need to know how. If you've never installed Arch before, you'll still need to know how to install it in order to use ArchFi
Or
because,
have a friend to phone.
well, yeah, that didn't happen. Anyway, I didn't call Ryan to help install Arch. That's ridiculous. I called him to help me install the hardware because that's where I'm incompetent.
So just to be clear, the thing that has a ton of documentation that everybody, to include Windows users, do.
No. I got to show you something. If you're going to bring up documentation, I have to show you the thing. The most annoying thing about setting up this hardware is that there was this
great
Jeep.
documentation.
No, yeah. Anyway, I got this this booklet that gives you a listing of like all the things you have to do. I have to find it, but all the things you to do of installing the the cooler and all the stuff. It tells you to turn the thing like clockwise, counterclockwise in order to do this to lock down the heatsink. You turn it the other way.
That's
So the
because when you're
documentation
installing
is so
You have it
helpful.
backwards?
You're meant to be reading it upside down when you're installing the heatsink. because
Right.
Your head's over the motherboard.
Oh, of course,
Come
I
on.
see. It's just the documentation
Everybody knows
is
that
not
one.
always the best. Is all I'm saying. And I
Yeah.
figured that out because of
In
something
fairness,
on YouTube.
if you can do the whole computer build with just documentation, I would be severely impressed.
Yeah, I mean, also there's
I
a
don't
lot
even
of
look at the
ridiculous stuff.
documentation when I build the machines. For better or for worse, I'm like, well, that piece fits here. Let's put that.
Well, so this will go here.
I'm just being honest.
I didn't want to risk just putting things random places, so I just asked Ryan where they go, and that's all. Like,
Well, in 20 years, Noah, to call shenanigans on your claim there, in 20 years of building machines, there is not a single person I know that automatically off the top of their head knows where the jumper cables go for the power switches without actually
That's
reading.
right. Which is why I buy Asus motherboards, because they label it on the board.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
do. They put a little PWR, and then they've got a little line, and then RST, and they point a little line, and then they've got like a little red. It's great. It's so great. And so the other thing that Asus has started doing in recent years, which is even better, is they label it on a little like header thing. And so you connect all the little individual wires.
That's true. I've seen
The
that.
header thing just plugs straight in. Like, it's so amazing. It's awesome.
that's cool. I didn't do that, but I did look at the documentation a little.
By
But-
looking at the documentation, it's let's see here. What do we have to do here? It's pictures and more text. Yeah. Hey Ryan. Hey, I got a computer for free. No, of course I didn't pay for it. Yeah, no. I'm gonna need some help putting it together. Well, I started to, and I created the scenes, but I created 170 of them. Yeah, but still don't exactly know how it goes together. So maybe you can help me. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, we'll start in 15 minutes. Yeah, well, I know it's been an hour and a half, but we'll start in another 15 minutes, and then we'll put that computer together.
I
Okay,
would
great.
be okay.
7 hours.
This-
What'd you say?
This performance
3
you've
days
just
later.
made, this performance that you have just imagined in your own head,
Right.
should be offensive to me, but it's kind of accurate in some ways. So I'm just gonna. So I'm just gonna let it go.
But it was awesome. You have an amazing
She-
computer, honestly. And tell them about the render time differences between the two machines.
Well, I tested it, and before we get into that, I actually want to talk about the fact that the older hardware I had would be like somewhere between 50% to 60% CPU usage in order to do the show while we're recording. Now currently at 6.8%. So that's fantastic. But also the render time has gone down ridiculous. So like the render for the last week's episode was around an hour and a half to 2 hours. I don't remember exactly when or how much it was, but this particular setup now, I tested the same configuration, the same Kdenlive rendering, and it was 25 minutes. So that is awesome. That allows me to do so many things that it makes it easier to do more renderings or faster rendering. I can do more editing stuff and it will still render faster. I can make more videos for the YouTube channel. I can do all kinds of stuff like this, and at some point I will begin to do that.
Well, really, thank you to the community who donated that hardware.
It is
That's
amazing.
awesome.
So thanks BC for it. It's amazing, and I've already sent him some benchmarks and stuff. It's like, this is awesome.
Yeah,
we joke, but the truth is, like, we're super appreciative because it may have been a quote unquote gift to Michael, but the reality is, it makes the show better. It makes our ability to try different things and do different things better. It also reinforces the idea that you can have modern, great hardware that you can get up and running with no real extra effort with Linux.
So before we get started with the rest of the show, I wanted to do something that I think that we're all going to be super excited about, and that is to let you know about the big announcement that we're going to be doing next episode. So it's no mystery that Destination Linux has continued to grow as a podcast, but also as a community, and it's grown in ways that we've never dreamed of it happening. And with this growing community and reach of the podcast, it's important that we build upon the momentum and provide new ways for experiencing Destination Linux content and explore ways that we can give back to the community as well. So we wanted to let everyone know that there's some amazing things coming for Destination Linux that will be officially announced on September 15th.
So, and what we're going to do is, this is going to be a very special episode. So we're going to be streaming it live on YouTube. Now, our patrons still get to come and join us in Zoom as always, but everyone else gets to see the show this week with all our blunders live. So what's really important is that you clear your calendars, okay? You speak to your family and you let them know. Sunday, September the 15th.
I have an 8-hour commitment because I'm watching DL Live.
Leave me alone. Don't bother me.
There you go. An 8-hour commitment. This is going to be good, though. This is going to be fantastic.
It's going to be worth it.
Yeah, and we can't wait to share it with you. And it involves everybody here, so it's going to be awesome.
And also, to be clear, it's going to be September 15th on 1 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to be there live if you don't want to wait to get the announcement. We're going to be releasing the announcement on the next episode anyway. But if you want to get it early, definitely join us live because it's going to be awesome. This episode of Destination Linux is sponsored by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is an awesome platform. They have the developer-friendly cloud platform. It's optimized to do all kinds of things, so it makes it easier to scale your app, to install the app. They actually have like a marketplace to make easy to install. They have a lot of tutorials. Even if you're not using DigitalOcean, there's also a lot of agnostic tutorials that you can use for any kind of system. That gets actually 2,000 tutorials and all kinds of stuff to help you stay up to date for like software, frameworks, languages, and all kinds of things open source. And we're actually going to be working on using some new droplets to build out the things like the announcement we're going to talk about next week. There's quite a few things that are being utilized with DigitalOcean to do those. So we love DigitalOcean because they make a huge impact in our production and making it much better. And I think that you'll love it too. And in fact, not only that you'll love the fact that the prices are so cheap. So you can get started for $5 a month or as low as 0.7 cents per hour, and that's darn near free. So if you want to get started, it gets even better than that because they'll give you for 1 month for free with a $50 credit, so you can try all sorts of different size droplets and different configurations and everything. And you can do that by going to do.co/DL. Again, you can start on DigitalOcean with that $50 credit for 1 month for free by going to do.co/DL. And thanks again to DigitalOcean for sponsoring Destination Linux.
Community feedback this week is from Dave, who goes on to say, "Hi guys, I'll try and keep this brief. I'm trying to limit the amount of tracking by Google, and I'm sure that's something that Ryan will appreciate. So I loaded up Opera, and it runs more efficient than Firefox in my OpenSUSE laptop with low overhead. I love the overall workflow in Opera. Do you feel that Opera is now less secure because it was sold in 2016 to a Chinese company? Am I just trading the eyes from Google on me to China? Thanks, Dave.
So my opinion, Opera, I've used it in the past, specifically back in the day when it was a mobile browser. It was kind of well known for its gesturing system that they had implemented. Now a lot of browsers have copied it. They are, however, today based on Chromium. I don't know if they always were. I don't recall, but I know today they're based on Chromium.
They used to have their own system, like version 12.
Opera existed before Chrome existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that it's based on Chromium, I really don't feel like you're gaining anything more than you would gain from just using Chromium, for instance, in using Opera. So the whole idea of it being purchased by a Chinese businessman and a couple other tech firms that are involved with it certainly does, if you're worried about government entities and the hacking that's going on, I think leave some questions of its true security measures that are in place, plus being based on Chromium. My answer, honestly, at this point is if you are truly concerned with privacy and security, the best option at the moment is still Firefox. There are things Firefox has done that make me question some of the things, but they're very minor in the grand scheme of things, whereas Chrome, I could spend hours questioning their decisions and the things that they do. So Firefox is not perfect, but they are the best. And I will absolutely agree, Chrome and Chromium-based browsers generally are more efficient and they're faster. There was, in fact,
not more efficient, but faster rendering times.
In the most recent Phoronix benchmarks, he did a test between the latest release that just happened of Firefox last week and the latest release of Chrome. Chrome stomped Firefox the entire time. But the important thing to remember is we're talking fifths of a second stomping. So you're waiting for a browser to load a fifth of a second more. Or 2/5 of a second more. Like, this is so such a non-issue.
It also matters like how much it stomps in the sense of render time versus the amount of resources it uses of your system. And it also matters how many tabs were tested and what kind of tabs we're testing, if it was a video site or if it was a random text site. So like there's so many different factors there that go into that. So once you get to the certain level of Chrome having like 100 tabs open, Chrome is ridiculous versus Firefox in the sense of resource usage. But I agree completely that Firefox is the best privacy available browser that has all the main features that you want from a browser and a lot of extra stuff like the container tabs and that kind of thing. So if you want to learn more about Firefox and why it's awesome, the 7 reasons why I use Firefox video on my channel is a great way to check it out. But I'd also say that if you wanted to use Chromium-based browser for some reason, I would say that if you're going to do that, Opera is pretty much, you can just ignore it because all the benefits that you would look at Opera are also available in Vivaldi. And Vivaldi is created by the original team that made Opera, and back in the day when Opera was actually its own browser. So, Vivaldi is also a Chromium-based browser, so you're still having that kind of issue. But at the same time, if you insist on having Chromium-based, I think Vivaldi is a good option. It's still a proprietary option. So if you want the open source aspect, then Chromium's the only really option there you can get. But if you want something like what Opera used to be, Vivaldi is the closest one in terms of the Chromium-based stuff.
And Michael's aware of this. I spent probably 2 to 3 months trying other browsers outside of Firefox on my personal machines. And I switched every machine over for those months. And I did everything from Brave, Opera, Vivaldi. And I had issues with all of them. It was random things. For Brave, for instance, one day I opened up and there was all of these tabs open of websites I had never visited before open on my screen. And I don't know how it happened. It was just when I actually, what it was is I was using their sync system. And when I did the sync code, because they have you write in text, that's when it opened up all these things, these tabs that I had never opened before. So I was thinking it must have synced somebody else's data. Well, that's enough right there. Brave's gone. I'm done. So then I went to Vivaldi and I had issues, I think, with Vivaldi where on certain distros, I just couldn't get it to run correctly. It kept shutting down or having problems. And it just kind of went the gamut to, at the end, I told Michael, like, okay, you were right again. Firefox is still it, like, at the end of the day. And that's what I feel is just the best option.
We need to garner some support for Firefox too, because as Internet Explorer transitions to the Chrome engine, you're going to have 90+ some % that are using Chrome, and 10% that is split between every other browser, right? That includes Safari, that includes Firefox, that includes Vivaldi, that includes Opera, that includes every other browser system. And so Firefox has the best frameworks, right? And I'm recently falling in love with Firefox framework again, because the browser that is on Selfish OS is based off the Firefox framework, and it works great. And certain things that a tiny little organization like, well, I don't know, tiny, but small organization like Yalla is not going to be able to reinvent the wheel from the ground up, is only possible because the Firefox framework exists. And if it wasn't there, they'd probably base it off of Chrome. And so if we're really serious about limiting, the fact that websites are opening on other people's sync systems, that's terrifying. Right? Like, that's a privacy nightmare. That is absolutely terrifying, that all of your websites that you have logged in, you sign into the sync system, that shows up on somebody else's system just randomly, just goes to show you how bad these privacy invasive, sync systems are. And so, and Firefox doesn't suffer from any of those issues, right? Yeah. So I feel like we owe it to the Firefox team, the Mozilla team, to try to be good stewards of saying, hey, this is a technologically superior product to use, and it provides a better end experience, and they do actually care about your privacy. And by the way, if you have any questions about that, just show up to a Mozilla meeting. They meet every week, and it's open.
Yeah. But let's get back to one of the questions that he asked in his communique with us. Because Opera is based on Google, is he not really swapping over the Google eyes? Do they still have all of those eyes on you, even though it's Opera?
No, because Chromium is totally open source, right? And so if just because something uses the Chrome engine doesn't necessarily come with any of the privacy problems, right? If it's Google Chrome proper, yes. But if you're using anything based on the Chromium engine, Ryan, you'd probably be a better person to answer this than I, but I don't think there's any way that Google is going to be able to come in and do anything. Otherwise, that would get pointed out inside of the source code. They go, hey, look at this one thing. This API key sends all of the, I don't know, URL or search data.
I think you're partially correct, but in my experience, there are two things that get hacked and compromised the most. Number one is add-on system, and number two is sync systems. So if you're using Chromium, the first thing, as I recall, when I used to install it, it pops up with is log into your Google account. So now you've got your sync system set up that's going to be interfacing with Google servers. The second one is it uses the Google Store App Store, which is the primary place where they're actually people are siphoning information from your computer and browsing history and all that stuff.
But those are optional, right? You don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to. So to your point, you're correct on one asset. If you're just using the Chromium engine, you're not doing the beginning scene of syncing your Google account up to Chromium, and you're not doing add-ons from the Google store, you're probably okay. But in that case, I would say, why aren't you just using Firefox so you can use the sync system and can use add-ons that you can trust? But in essence, you're correct.
Mm-hmm. And the China question, is that just a tinfoil hat question, or
no? There's really no way to say, because all the stuff that's in Opera and even Vivaldi, all the stuff that's sitting on top of the Chromium stuff is proprietary. So we really don't know what they're doing there anyway.
We don't know for sure, but we do know that China has a vested interest and really doesn't value data privacy at all. Right? Like, they're very open about the fact that they block certain sites and block certain, subnets and all of that. So, I mean, you don't know for sure, but I'd say there's generous evidence to suggest that using a Chinese-based browser is not going to lead to enhanced privacy.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I would say that I would agree with that. It's probably not likely to improve it or anything. And so, especially going from Google to anything else, like, you're still, if you go from Google Chrome to Chromium, you can kind of, sort of fill it as long as you don't log into the other stuff. But at the same time, like Ryan said, like, Firefox can provide you all the features and not have to worry about the tracking issue, because one of their biggest, main feature points is the privacy and the lacking of tracking.
Yeah. Now, I'm not a fan of how some of the things Firefox does, to be clear, but they are literally the best option out there, in my opinion, on the research.
If you're focused on privacy.
If you're focused on privacy.
Or in general, because container tabs are amazing.
Container tabs are amazing. However, talk to anybody that has used Firefox and Chrome side by side, and every one of them will tell you that there are just little tiny things. And yes, maybe it's only a fifth of a second here or there, but there are tiny little things all around the Chrome browser and the design of it that make it just a little bit more performant, a little bit faster, a little bit better. Is it anything lightning? No. Have I used it side by side and seen what they're talking about and still choose to use Firefox? Yes. but it is a conscious decision based on privacy, not a flat out, well, it's just the best browser ever. I do think that Chrome has some technical competitive advantages that we have to address, because not to do so would mean that we stump the future growth of Firefox.
That's fair.
Agreed.
Tyler writes in regarding the discussion of a password manager and 2FA from last episode. He says, why not just use KeePass XC and synchronize your password database with the DigitalOcean droplet? No fancy scripts needed. Just use the SCP command to manually synchronize. That isn't that much work. That way you can use free and open source software as your password manager. I've been doing this using OpenBSD, the best OS. No. Instance on Voltaire for several months now, and I can't imagine using a closed source password manager. Kind regards, love the show, Tyler. So here is, I'll give you my take on it, and then I'll let some of the other guys chime in. So as to why you should use KeePass XC, all of my main password databases are in KeePass because I like the fact that I have a local file with local encryption that I have stored on a local drive that isn't anywhere on a network. It goes to an air-gapped machine, and all of the real passwords that I actually have to keep safe are on that machine only. Now, that doesn't do much in the way of convenience, which is what you're talking about. The reason that I wouldn't use KeePass XC and sync it over with an SCP command is because that'll work fine if you're just backing up one machine or syncing between two machines, and you're the only one using it. It becomes infinitely more difficult if you just want to say, I need to sit down at a machine and with just what I have and what I know, be able to set a new machine up. If you want to do that, there are better ways to do it. The easiest way is to set up something like C-File and sync your KeePass database around. Now, C-File has a duplication protection. So if the KeePass file is a database is already open on one machine, C-File is going to recognize that. It's going to create a conflict document, and it's going to give you two copies and say, hey, at this particular time on this particular date, you opened up a password database. I noticed that it was already open, so I've created a conflict resolution for you, boss. Which one do you want to be the master, or how do you want to merge them? And so it'll deal all of that for you. The better version, if you want to go one step further than that, is just use something like Bitwarden, because Bitwarden is also open source, specifically designed to be synced around multiple devices, encrypted by default, and only your password can unlock the private key. And although, unlike KeePass, the private key is actually stored on the server, which is what allows it to sync to any other device. Because it's encrypted with your passphrase, you can't. Even the folks at Bitwarden are able to unlock your private key, and thus can't unlock your private database. I would argue that Bitwarden is basically a drop-in replacement for LastPass in that it has all the same functionality and features of LastPass, but it can be self-hosted. It is open source, and all the information is owned by you. So,
and it has extra features that LastPass doesn't have that makes it even better.
Right. So I like where you're going with it. I definitely agree with the local storage options. There's just better, in my opinion, there are better ways to get to where you're going.
I think there's multiple options here for people. And in that last episode, we got a lot of feedback. Why not talk about Bitwarden? Why not talk about all these other KeePass XC we've heard before? It just shows there are a lot of options out there. And if you have a system that works for you, then by all means utilize it, but make sure that you're listening to some experts out there on security and things, and keeping your database up to date and your DigitalOcean server up to date, because obviously anything can be hacked. And when we talked about this, I was talking about FreeOTP. I'm not sure if you were on the episode, Noah. FreeOTP is actually developed by Red Hat and distributed out there as a two-factor authentication system for Apple iOS, Android, and all the other devices out there for desktops and things as a two-factor authentication tool. Now, I use Bitwarden. I pay for Bitwarden, but I also use FreeOTP because I actually split my accounts based on their sensitivity into multiple authentication, different systems. In case one was to get compromised, I have backups. My most sensitive accounts, I use something like FreeOTP, which does no syncing to the cloud, has no cloud syncing at all. It's just a file that you can back up, but it's just a file sitting there that is not accessed by the cloud. And then if I need something that's syncable, like my email service for 2FA, I'll use something like a Bitwarden or another tool. So there are multiple ways to go about security. I think it's all about the attack vector, how big of a platform you want if somebody does break into your stuff, because everything can be broken into. It's just a matter of somebody wanting it. And so with that being said, I think you need to minimize the attack vectors as much as possible. So maybe using a combination of services is an option as well.
Yeah,
I would just depend on to that. I agree with 99% of that, except for the fact of, like, if they want it bad enough, right? I would challenge anybody to say that I trust the encryption and I trust my security practices enough that the passwords that are stored on my previously mentioned encrypted hard drive that has never been plugged into a machine that has any sort of outside connectivity in the world, there is approximately 0.00000000001% chance that anybody's ever going to get access to those passwords.
And a final security tip, and it is probably so obvious everyone's going to go, oh, really? You've got this wonderful Bitwarden or KeePass XC or whatever you've got. Change the master password.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So many people will sit there going, I've got Bitwarden, I'm safe. Password 1. No one will get into this. It'll be working perfectly.
You need to have a very strong master password. Yeah.
Not only that,
make it password 2 or password 7 or password 6. Just change it. So many people I know. What's your password? When's the last time you changed it? 7 months ago. Really? Madness.
Or times where they'll be like, it's like, what's your password? Oh, it's my birthday written out. Like, no. Don't do that.
Consider this, okay? A password manager with an insecure master password or a password manager that doesn't utilize U2F is actually worse. This is going to take some people for a ride. Okay, you ready? It's worse than just using the same password for everything. Because at least when you use the same password for everything, nobody has a directory listing. They don't know what your username is, and they don't know what all the sites are. If you have a unique password, let's say it's an insanely good unique password, but you have one central place that has every site, every username, and all of those really secure, unique passwords, and it's secured with something very insecure. You've not only given somebody access to your password list, but you've also given them a directory listing on all the places they can use it, right? It's actually worse. So if you're going to go into a password manager, if you're going to have one central place for somebody to attack you, you better make sure that you do your due diligence to make sure that thing is absolutely locked down tight and you're not doing what Michael does and secure it with the password I love Ryan, Intel, NVIDIA, and Ubuntu proper.
That's not what I do. As we discussed previously.
That's not your password anymore? You changed it?
No. What I do is we already discussed previously. I just don't have things connected or powered on at all. So
yeah, that's a good tip. Don't power on anything. You're safe.
Yeah, there you go. Just turn it off. Totally secure.
So a couple episodes ago, we got a video from Ricardo, and we responded to him in the episode, and he decided to give us a reply in email. And he says, thanks a lot for answering my question. I heard about i3 but never used it. I will definitely try that out. The long-term plan is to control everything through the keyboard with minimal UI that is performant and minimal as possible. Is there a specific setup, distro, guide, or anything you can recommend for that? And he says, I don't mind the setup being hard. When I looked into it, people were recommending Arch Linux and then only install what you need and that sort of thing. He said, but also for the shortcuts, I actually found a great open source project called QMK or QMK firmware. This does exactly what I want and more. I had never heard about it before. It provides a bunch of interesting features like leader key, different layers, macros, and many more. So the only issue is that the software runs on the keyboard specifically, so it requires a keyboard that has support for that firmware. So if your keyboard doesn't have support for QMK, you can't use it. If you guys didn't know about this project yet, it might be interesting to look into. It does require having that kind of paddle keyboard though, but also for the swag, since I'm from Germany, there's no need to pay for any shipping costs from the US. Have a great week, and thanks for Ricardo for sending in that reply. And Ryan, we have a solution for Ricardo on that swag thing.
Well, our solution is Zeb. So maybe Zeb could get you some swag. So we've got your address, or if you could send us your address, we could still get that to you in Germany, which will be slightly cheaper, I think, for Zeb to ship it than us from the US, and we'll make sure Zeb gets compensated back for that. So definitely give us your address so we can get you that swag out. Now, to answer your question regarding the distro here, so Arch Linux is obviously, we were talking about it earlier about Michael running it. I like Arch. But if you have found a solution without reinstalling an OS, unless you just want to play with a different OS, I say you stick with what you have and use QMK because that solves your issue. But if you're wanting to play around with an i3 setup, what we were talking about before, then actually I would go Arco Linux. I think he probably has one of the best i3 pre-setups out there, and it has a GUI installer, so you don't have to mess with figuring out Arch again unless you want to learn how to install it and go through that. But Arco Linux has a pre-setup i3. He uses Conky, which has a wallpaper on the side to tell you the shortcuts right there on your wallpaper. So you can kind of get a nice pre-setup i3 experience without having to set it up yourself. And then as you learn i3, you can start going in and customizing it and learning the code that way. That would be my recommendation if you want to. But otherwise, if you're happy with what you have and you found a good solution, stay there.
So we want to hear from you, our listeners. Send in your favorite Linux software tips or tricks. But more importantly, do you like the slight change that we've made to the show where we're having more feedback at the beginning of the episodes? If you like that idea, great. Let us know on comments@destinationlinux.org, and any other topic that you think we should be covering, shouldn't be covering. You did like this, you didn't like that. We love getting your feedback because it helps us structure the show and gives us some great topics of discussion.
So this week in the news, we have GNOME 3.34 that is dropping this week. So GNOME has had a reputation, I think this is fair, that in the past, when you see a release, generally you see things being taken away, not being added. Doesn't mean we don't love GNOME. That's just something that's kind of gone out there as a meme, has become a meme out there, but they are changing that. And you could see that in this release 3.34 because literally nothing is being taken away. There are only new things being added in here. So I was pretty excited to see that. I think one of the standout features for those who like the grid-like show application menu of GNOME is the ability now to drag and drop apps together into folders. So if you're familiar with this on your phone, you can, on your phone, usually you grab an icon, you drag it over another icon, it creates a folder and pops up and tells you to name it. Before in GNOME, you had to go through the settings menu to create individual folders and then go back to the applications and decide what you want to move in. Now all that can be done right from the show application,
Very
just
nice.
like on your phone. You drag it, drop it over another icon, it prompts you to create a folder, and you're done. They're also improving things like background wallpapers to make it easier for you to add pictures from anywhere. So before, if you recall, you had to have your wallpapers in the pictures folder. That's the only place it allowed you to search. Now you can search anywhere in your file system and choose the picture that you want as your background. And finally, and probably the best change here, in my opinion, is performance-based, because while I've been using Pop! OS a lot, and I love Pop! OS on my System 76 machine, I have to say, and this is the case when I've used Fedora GNOME and others, it just feels slow, right? Compared to a KDE or an XFCE. It's not that it's truly slow. It's still 20,000 times faster than Windows, don't get me wrong, but it's either the animations or whatever, just the performance.
The fact that it's all running on a single thread.
The single threaded issue, whatever. So in any case, Canonical's Daniel Van View has put in a series of GNOME Shell performance patches to remove the sluggishness and make the overall experience feel smoother. So I'm very excited to experience those changes there as well. There are other things they've enhanced, GNOME boxes, hot corners, UI improvements, nothing being taken away. I guess the unfortunate thing is if you're not on a rolling distro, you're going to have to wait till the new official releases of all the distros to experience all the changes in GNOME 3.34, or go and compile it, I guess, yourself. But
that's pretty much for every DE, though. So, I mean, that's just something that most DEs have to deal with. But it's really great that GNOME Shell is improving all this stuff, especially the performance thing, because I agree, it feels really nice and polished, but it doesn't. It also feels a little sluggish in certain cases. So, improve the performance is one of the most important factors. I really like the making it easier to create folders things, because the way that they lay out the app grid. That's actually one of my favorite ways of having the layout on the desktop. I don't duplicate it on my system, but I do duplicate a lot of their workflow because I think GNOME's workflow is pretty good. So this is really cool. And I think that if you wanted to, I think there's actually a way to do like a Docker container or some kind of image. I'm pretty sure there's a way to test the new versions. You'd be able to play with it. You wouldn't be able to run it. But I think there is like some kind of testing system that they're doing, or maybe like GNOME Boxes has that ability to do it. So I think that's cool if you want to check out the latest version and you don't want to wait for your distro. I think there is a way for that.
So up next, we've got a tool that I'm sure is in everybody's toolbox. We've all been there before. We've made some changes. We've just installed the latest GNOME Desktop 3.34. You go to reboot, nothing. Grub has mysteriously decided to mess up. Now, it's not the fault of GNOME 3.34. Let's get that clear. It's just one of those things that happens with computers. So what do? You go to your trusty Super Grub Disk 2. So they've now got a new release, 2.04 Sierra 1. That's 2.04 S1. So it's been released. And the other options that are out there, for me, just don't seem to be as good as Super Grub 2 Disk. So some of the new features that they are including this time round is extra Grub 2 functionality. Now, it's really strange because they don't actually list what that extra functionality is. So I guess you're going to have to play with the interface to try and find out. They've enabled Grub2's LVM support. They've enabled RAID support. They've enabled PATA support to work around old BIOS bug limitations, etc. They've mounted encrypted volumes, LUKS and Geli. And they've enabled serial terminals. Not quite sure what that means, but I'm sure one of the technical guys can help you with this. But if you've ever been stuck with needing to get back into your system, definitely SuperGrub 2 disk will be your savior. Guys, who's had really good experience with this?
I'm really curious, Noah, because you do this professionally, right? You have people who mess up their machines. They probably call you and go, "Oh my gosh, what do I do?" Or in your case, you may have a machine that you have to get back in warning. Maybe you tried something to test what a client's doing and you messed up your grub. I know you keep rescue discs on you at all times.
I do. Yep.
I actually keep one around my on my swag chain here that I have that has my YubiKey, and this is actually a little USB key here with Grub Rescue on it.
That's
so
awesome.
I was curious, what do you carry on? What are some of the tools you carry with you?
So I use System Rescue CD is what I carry as a tool on my flash drive. But you know, the honest to God truth is, and this is kind of an unpopular thing to say, but it's the truth. Grub is a very, very stable bootloader, right? So at the point that something goes drastically wrong with Grub, 95% of the time, there's something else going on, and Grub is just the symptom of the problem, right? You have a hard drive failure, you have somebody that is messing with something that shouldn't be. There's usually another issue going on. Now, that's not so much true for people that necessarily listen to the show, right? Because we intentionally screw around with our systems, and yeah, every once in a while you bork something, and then you go and you go, well, instead of reinstalling, instead of nuke and pave, which is what we all do when we first start out, let's see if we can actually fix the problem. And by the way, you should always try to fix the problem, even if you nuke and pave afterwards, because you'll learn something. But when you're maintaining machines for other people, or when you're fixing stuff, chances are if Grub has something bad has happened to Grub, you should be looking elsewhere. You shouldn't necessarily be focusing on fixing Grub, because chances are something else is broken.
Nice. So Super Grub Disk 2, for instance, is an interesting one because it doesn't actually fix Grub for you, right? It doesn't try to do an auto fix in there. It just literally gets you all the boot options that are available at that moment and allows you to get back in the operating system so that you can go in there and try to find out what has happened, what has taken place. And it's basically OS agnostic. If it's a Windows boot partition you need to get back into, a Linux partition you need to get back into, it's going to find all of the available boot options and list them out there, and then you can choose which one you need to get back into. And then, of course, you're going to have to do your repairs, unless you want to use this 24/7 to get into your system, to Grub, do a Grub reinstall or whatnot that needs to be done in order to get your system working again. I think it's an awesome tool that everybody should have on a USB drive that you write in permanent marker. This is what I have to do so I don't keep overwriting my USB drives as I'm getting a new distro. Don't overwrite this USB, or this is Grub Rescue, or make sure you label it so you have it there, because when you need it, you're going to need it probably pretty bad, and you'll have that USB that you put away somewhere to get back into your system and repair things.
Yeah, it's also good, for example, if you want just to get back in, so you can, even if you don't, if you wanted to nuke and pave, this is still a good tool because you can get back in and then make a backup of all the files and all the configurations and stuff. Because if you had an issue prior and you couldn't boot in, some people would just kind of just wipe the whole drive and lose everything. This way, you could still get back in and get all your stuff, including LUKS encrypted drives, which is awesome. So I think it's definitely something you should check out. And I agree completely. If you need this, if you do any kind of tech support or whatever, having something like this on a flash drive available is a fantastic solution.
So Noah, I don't know if you know the answer to this. I'm going to put you on the spot. The question Zeb asked, enable serial terminal. When I think of a serial terminal, I think of like a RS-232 terminal or something like that.
It's, if you've ever set up like a Dell Enterprise server, one of the things that it has the capability of doing inside of the BIOS is what they call console redirection. And essentially what that does is you choose a COM port on the back of the server, and it will redirect the BIOS and all of the stuff that boots up until it hits the operating system. It will redirect all of that output over the serial port to include your command line interface if you're just using CLI in your operating system. And so what that does is it allow, when it comes out of the COM port, then of course you can use all sorts of tools like like a terminal server to get that COM port data to a remote location. And so you're able to actually boot and reinstall the OS remotely, even without using something like iDRAC. And so if I were a betting man, that's what I would say they mean when they're talking about serial console access.
Very cool. Makes sense to me.
So Firefox 69 has been released, and this new version comes with a new suite of privacy tools and security improvements for protections for its users. One of the most talked about features for this release is the Enhanced Tracking Protection, or the ETP. So the ETP is now turned on by default, and it blocks third-party tracking cookies, crypto miners, and the strict setting adds the ability to block fingerprinting as well. I'm pretty sure the strict setting is not on by default, but you can just go into your preferences and just click a checkbox, and it adds that on there. It also has improved the blocking of autoplay for videos.
I love that.
That's one of my favorite things. Like, I'm not sure if it's on by default, but if it isn't, you should definitely go in and turn it on, because the autoplaying is the most annoying thing, especially when there's these ads, or there's like these. You go to the article for a website to see the latest news, and then they have a video playing that's completely irrelevant to the actual article you want to read. You're like, oh, I have to turn this off, and then whatever. Yeah. Like that is such a it doesn't seem like it's that big of an issue, but when you turn it on, it's just amazing. Like, just to have that kind of feature. There's also something that's being added where the US users can get the new tab page experience where it connects to your Pocket content. So that's pretty interesting if you use the Pocket service. And they've added a lot of other additional features like multiple video codec mixing, making it possible for WebRTC conference services to mix video from multiple clients into the thing. So that's really cool. And quite a few more things. There's actually I'm a fan of Firefox overall, but one of the things that I really love about it is that their focus on privacy and security is like their top thing that they do. So these improvements are something I'm happy to see, as well as all the other features that they're working on as well.
So there's some interesting news. Obviously, this is what I want to see coming from Firefox in every announcement, and they've delivered, at least on the last 4 or 5 releases, with a complete focus on lockdown and security and track protection. And this is why I use Firefox. This is why I love them, right? They're the ones out there who, regardless of the ad revenue impacts this has by blocking everything out there on these sites, by stopping videos out there, which, obviously companies like Google and things, they want to block everybody else's ads, but I want to make sure theirs come through. There's just a completely different intention here from Mozilla than there are from the other companies. But there's something interesting that happened I'd like to get everybody's opinion on. Chris Beard has been the CEO through this since, I don't know how long he's been CEO. I guess for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. Michael, do you know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he started in 2014.
2014, yeah.
Yeah.
So Chris Beard has been the CEO through a lot of this transition with Mozilla. Obviously, things are changing heavily. I've looked at the numbers. In the last 2 years, the user base for Mozilla has not gained. It's actually dropped, which makes me incredibly sad that less and less people care about their privacy. But over the last 2 years, the users have dipped from 310 million to 239 million users. That's a significant drop. I think a lot of that actually came during the time where they had the issue with the license that expired.
Yeah, it was not a license; it was a certificate, because basically every add-on broke for a lot of people.
So it's interesting at this time. I think Chris has done a great job, but when the CEO changes, a lot can change for a company. A lot of cultural shifts can happen. Things can go bad. They can go really right. We don't know. It depends on who they choose. Anybody have any thoughts here on what this means for Mozilla or Firefox as far as losing their CEO?
As long as it's not going to be somebody like Eric Emerson Schmidt, I think we should be okay.
I don't think the Firefox community would allow somebody like Schmidt to come in, right? I think that one of the things that's great about Mozilla is that the organization itself exists above and beyond a given CEO, beyond a given leader. I remember a couple of years ago there was a quote unquote scandal, I guess if I can use that word, where the CEO of Mozilla was it came out that he was contributing large portions of money to religious organizations that held views that were not in line with people that lived an alternative lifestyle, and I guess he stepped down over that, and part of that is because Mozilla as a whole, as an organization, as a product, as a project, exists beyond just one person. And so, no, I don't, I don't think who gets the position really has a huge amount of impact, because I think if they're not a good fit, the community has proven time and time again that they'll be shown the door.
Yeah, I mean
All right, let me
Firefox is
ask-
interesting because they do the CEO does have the influence or whatever, but the Firefox organization is, like Noah said, is wrapped around an ideal structure. So like their ideals are more important to the whims of a CEO. So they're only going to be getting a CEO that fits their ideals.
Right.
I would assume.
So with that, is there some advice here? Obviously, they're losing momentum. Some of it is not their fault. There are a lot of factors occurring in various ecosystems within Linux
Sure.
that with Chromium mass adoption, Microsoft going to Chromium. Of course, Microsoft we know loves Linux. So is there anything here that we think? What would you do if you were given this position? Any of you? This is open for anyone to help Mozilla get back some of the user base they've lost.
I have so many
the
things.
Sorry, if I can. I think the difficulty with that one is that you're dealing with a general public that doesn't care. These
That's
guys
right.
use Facebook. These guys use
That's
Windows.
right.
These guys use Google. They're not interested in the technological superiority of a product like Mozilla. So you are fighting a really big uphill struggle. So the only suggestion that I can give to them is keep doing what you're doing, keep becoming innovative, making it more secure, and then hopefully one day the general public will wake up. Might not be for a few years yet, might not be for a long time, going by experience, but you're on a long hill climb. It's going to be
You make
difficult.
a great point, Noah, because Zeb, I really thought Cambridge Analytica situation breach was going to just enlighten the population of how serious the people who were saying in the past, and we've hey, I don't care, I don't put anything out there, I just have Facebook and post I like cheesecake every once in a while, so I'm safe. But you would think when Cambridge Analytica broke that everyone would have opened their eyes and gone, oh my gosh, I have to get off this service. This is a complete violation of our privacy, overreach by the government and corporations, but nothing really happened, right?
Well, it's also because of the way that we've got desensitized a lot of factors, but there's also an issue of like I'm a marketer, so one of the things that I always look at is the marketing, and Firefox does not market itself very well. Right. And they also don't present their best foot forward type of thing, because there's many things that are amazing about Firefox and they don't really talk about them. Like, for example, the container tabs. Not only do they never talk about it in any of their releases, it's not even a part of the browser unless you use the add-on, which Mozilla makes. So the feature is a Mozilla thing that they didn't add to the browser itself, so you have to go and get that feature. And then once you have that feature, you're like, this is awesome. I wish it could do these other things, which are also in other add-ons that you could totally do, including a Facebook container, which is also a separate add-on that Mozilla made. There's many things that they just included this by default and made an easier experience. It would make the transition for people a much cleaner way, and it would make it where Firefox is no longer, it's basically right now, it's like a piecemeal situation where you have this amazing platform to do all these different cool features, but you have to know that those features exist and set them up.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know it's obvious to us, but let's just put it in simplistic terms. If you open up your browser, Firefox, and you put Facebook in either a container or the Facebook container, that makes it 100% more difficult for them to track you. So yes, they're still getting a bit of information, but they're not getting information that you then went to Google search next, and you then went to look at Amazon, and you then went to look, because you're no longer on Facebook, but they are tracking you. But if you put it into a container, that makes it much more difficult for them to do.
Yeah,
I think
and
you
also
always have to follow the money trail. And my advice for Mozilla CEO is they're going to need to be able to find a way to make money. And unfortunately, the easiest way is to violate people's privacy and security. So they actually have a much harder, their hands are tied behind their back and weights tied around their feet because they're trying to be private and secure and somehow make money at the same time. So I think the answer to that actually is for them to provide more services in to Michael's point, as a combined suite, so people don't have to go hunt and find out. To this day, people are like, Firefox has an ability to send files like Firefox Send. Firefox has these encryption services for stuff. People don't know about the services because they're all spread out all over the place. They need to make a Google Suite alternative where you go to a Firefox search engine. It uses a privacy-based search. And there's a little button you click on that shows you all the apps available, and they need to sell and charge for it, much like Purism tried to do with their privacy suite. But if it came from a company, and we all said this back when Purism announced it, that we totally trusted, like Mozilla, all of us would pay into it. There's ways to make money there. Yes, they have a more of an uphill battle than anybody else, but I hope the new CEO hears this or gets the feedback maybe from someone in the community that works there, because I think there's money to be made. That would be the way I would execute on it if I was an issue.
Yeah, I agree. Just have it polish up your browser, get all the really innovative things that you create and put them like accessible to people so that they know about it. And the services thing is a fantastic point. I would absolutely love to have a service from Mozilla to have all of those different features in a nice suite approach, like having email and calendar and all that stuff. That would be one of the things that Mozilla could basically like turn. I think that would be, if they did both of those things where they made it, they polished their browser, put all their features actually in the browser, and then provided a service that makes it more people want to use their browser, then yeah, I think we turn it around completely. And I think all the users they lost from that, the hiccups that they've had, would be happy to come back, and in fact thrilled to come back. Not only because they get the best browser and all these cool features, but they also get the convenience and polish of having everything in one suite.
Well, you have the potential of 239 million users now giving you $5, $10 a month. So that definitely is going to help with some of the loss there, even if you didn't gain additional users. Jacob in our Telegram chat or Zoom chat says Mozilla is odd and the container tabs is an add-on, but Pocket is not removable, even though Pocket as just an add-on that they bought. So that is kind of goes to the point here that,
that is weird.
Container tabs, they put Pocket by default. You could put container tabs in there by default, which is probably the most prominent, easy to explain to anybody, greatest feature Firefox has right off the cuff that anybody, even if they're not a security expert, could understand how great of a system that is.
Yeah, my 7 reasons for using Firefox Video, the number one reason is container tabs. So you absolutely should check that out. The container
Did you do a video, Michael?
Honestly,
did I mention that?
If you didn't mention it, Michael did a video.
Everyone, so they know, Michael did a video.
And so if you want to check anything out, don't listen to this show. Go listen to Michael's YouTube video.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in addition to.
Let me add to the end of the show that Michael did a video and people should check it out.
All right,
we'll
cool.
also have it linked in the show notes to this show, the other video that he did for his show.
You're not wrong about that.
What you should be listening to also.
In addition to.
The Purism Librem 5 is supposedly shipping. Now, the Purism folks have announced that a date has been set for the launch of the Librem 5. And, well, they're shipping a product. It's just not the product that people purchased. So I guess that's a step in the right direction. But I'm curious, is this another example of Purism promising too much and falling just a little bit short? Or are we making progress in a general direction to getting an actual privacy enhanced phone? Because I break down one of two ways, right? As a guy who is obsessed with a Sailfish OS phone, there's nothing I would like more than a US based company to come and say, hey, we're going to release a phone for the express purpose of privacy. In fact, on top of that, we're going to load proper Linux onto this phone, and you're going to be able to buy the phone and you'll be able to just have it. And if that process took an extra 6 months or an extra 8 months or an extra year, I would still be okay with it, because it's a great product that fulfills an actual niche, one that I am personally trying to fill. The problem that I have, and the problem that I continue to have, and the problem that I'm going to have today as we enter into this discussion is that Librem makes all the right statements, all the right promises, and does all the right things. They have all of the right things in their marketing videos, all the right things on their website. Everything to a privacy-conscious individual exists from Librem. But if I had backed this phone, I still wouldn't have it in my hands. Am I right or am I wrong? That's, I guess, where my frustration stems from.
I 100% agree with what you're saying here. And I don't have the history. I haven't been in Linux long enough to know. I mean, I've just heard the stories of what's happened with the laptops that they promised and took a long time to eventually deliver. Obviously, I think a lot of us I'll just speak for myself in telecom. If somebody said, hey, I want to go make hardware for a phone and I'm going to make an OS and I'm going to do it in a year or 2 years or 3 years, I would say, slow down. Let's start from, focus on the OS first to get it loaded on already existing device, then maybe focus on manufacturing. And by the way, that's going to take you a really long time. There, as I understand it, Purism has about 30 or so employees, maybe it's slightly more, but at the end of the day, there are massive organizations out there, from BlackBerry to Microsoft to others, who have gone into this arena and failed. Now, to Purism's credit, this is a niche market, right? We just talked about how few people honestly care about privacy and all of that. So they know they have a niche market, but they did a backing here, and they got the money, which I think was far too little, that they set their goal for, which was $2.5 million in the 60-day campaign. And then they said, hey, we're going to release this device, and you're going to have a phone, hardware, and a operating system that's going to allow you to have all of this freedom and privacy and security built in. So we all know, if you've been in the industry, they bit off way more than they could chew. I will give them credit that they at least came out and said, hey, we're going to release this in batches, and you can get one with loosely fit initial board, individually milled. You're going to have unaligned pieces and unfinished caps, but we're going to ship it on the committed date. As Michael will say, might be their third or fourth commitment date. I don't recall, but you're going to get it on their commit date in the September 24th, October 22nd area. We're going to call each person individually and ask you which batch you want to be a part of. Now, the third and fourth batch are really your most complete. You get all the hardware, you get the cap switches, you get all the refinements. And then for some reason in quarter two, if you wait all the way till then, you get like a brand new upgrade to your phone and a new 14 nanometer CPU. The whole time, to me, and I've talked to Michael about this yesterday offline, is I want to support a company that does this. I don't want to eat our own. I feel like they struggle terribly from two factors. Number one is marketing, and number two is project management.
Yeah, keeping their word.
They need to get a good project program manager into that company really, really bad, because and then the marketing side is they need to realize they're dealing with this niche market is probably some of your most intelligent, highly technical individuals in the business of IT. So we all know, looking at this announcement, what it really means. It's, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to make the date again. Let's pretend like we're giving you something like we said we were going to.
Right. I mean, the reality is where we started is we promise you, whatever the last batch, let's call it batch 5. Okay, I don't know how many batches there are, but let's say there's batch 5, and batch 5 is the totally completed project and blah, 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 blah. Okay. What they're saying is, we promised batch 5 back over here. Now we're here, way past here, and we still don't even have batch 1. So instead of delivering batch 5 back over here, we'll deliver batch 5 way over there. And if that's unacceptable to you, here are all the compromises you can make in between. Like, how many times can they get away with this before people look up and go, okay, you know what? I just want to be able to buy a product and then have a product.
Yeah, and one of the things that was also crazy, and I think I'm right in saying, because I think one of the patrons has mentioned it as well. Okay, so you want to wait. I don't think you can wait until quarter 2 2020, because that's not what you're buying. That's going to be the second generation phone. So you have got to make the choice. And if you say, okay, I really, really want this, and I don't care if it's a little bit rattly and a bit tweaky, and you've paid, I don't know, $800 for this, or $599, I think, if you were one of the first backers, you've now just got, I'm sorry, a prototype that you've paid $500 for, and you're never going to get the real phone. If you want that real phone, you're going to have to then go back to Librem and pay them $800 for the machine that you backed them to build. So that's the biggest problem I have with it. However, if you paid that money and you're willing to take that first batch phone, that's your decision. You're getting something, you're helping it be made. But don't think you can then go back to them in quarter 2 of 2020 and say, right, here's your production model back. Can I have my proper phone now, please? Because you've paid your $500 and you've got what you bought. Yeah. That's where I think my problem with it lies.
I agree. I think that the biggest, just a quick correction. The quarter 2 is actually the evergreen batch, which will be the completed phone that people want. Quarter 4 is when they get the second generation. So if you wanted the actual phone that you like, the ideal phone that you wanted, you got to wait another year and a few months.
So if you back them, you can wait till quarter 2.
Yes, you can wait to quarter 2 to get the evergreen version, but I don't think the quarter 4 version, which is the fur version, will be available unless you buy it again for that phone.
Again, right? Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think the biggest issue is the fact that they're promoting it as if it's like they made their thing. Like, there's even people who are promoting it in the sense, like people who have been sponsored in the past by Purism, talking about how this is such a great thing that they met their shipment date. Is like they didn't, and it's okay that they didn't. Just don't tell me that you did. And
I think it's all about
just come out and say, hey, we were wrong. We didn't.
Yeah.
We're not able to meet your expectations. We're sorry. If you want a refund, X. If you are willing to wait, Y. And if you are willing to wait, but you don't, if you don't want to wait, but you want something, Z. If you want to offer those as 3 options, fine. But let's start the conversation with, hey, we screwed up. We overpromised. We can't deliver. And so we all would respect that. In fact, it would barely be a story. We would just say, hey, Pure finally announced that what we already all knew. And so now let's move forward. You know, the good thing about that is, though, they're having an openness and honest conversation. And at least now we can trust them when they say, hey, we're going to deliver a product by XYZ. At least we can believe that product is going to be delivered, rather than we all just have to read between the lines. I think it would be a very different discussion today if they had just come out and been honest with us.
Yeah, and I think that Librem 5 is going to be a good product at some point. It's just not this quarter, you know. And it's just actually kind of funny because there's certain things about the Librem 5 that I'm really excited about because they're doing things that, like, the Pine Phone is coming out too, and the Pine Phone is a phone that's like a reasonable price phone, and people have just debating like whether or not the Librem 5 is valuable in the sense of like the premium that they want, and there are certain things that they are doing that are interesting and impressive, and maybe even consider like the fact that you could some of it will be modular, like you could replace the baseband or something like that. Like those things are cool, but if they were just upfront about these things, and if they were just marketing in the sense of like they were mainly just being upfront to the people who they're marketing to, because like yes, they needed help in marketing, not because they're having a bad job of getting their name out there. It's that they're getting out the wrong message because they're saying these things that just aren't true, and they're trying to. It's basically marketing spin rather than just being upfront.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. Out of the 4 of us here, who actually ordered a pre? You know, who backed Librem 5 and said, yeah, here's your $600, give me a phone when it's ready?
Nobody's raising their hand here.
Okay.
Nobody.
So let's bring in a comment from one of our patrons who actually did. And he goes on to say, I paid $599 and at no point expected to get a product on time. I paid the money to show support for a product that had no other way of getting to the market. And now the Pinebook is being made as well. That would never have happened without the Librem 5. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I like the honesty in as much as he said, look, I took a chance. Here's my $600. Give me the phone when it's ready.
I see a lot of people on Twitter stating that they are going to get this initial board with loose fitting and individually milled, varying alignment, unfinished caps development board kit, basically. Okay. So not alone in that.
The community is doing their job. I think we all agree on that. That's not where my concern is, and I don't think that's where our concern is. We're not saying the community isn't responding well. What we're saying is that is a very generous response of a community, and the onus becomes on the manufacturer then to respect the fact that you have a community that's willing to bend over backwards to give you money and not hold you accountable for almost anything, because we all believe in the same thing. What is the most appropriate way to respond to those people? To lie to their faces and say, hey, you're going to get the product just like we promised? Or is the appropriate response to say, hey, you know what? Thanks for being so patient. Thanks for being so generous. Thanks for being so kind. Thanks for believing in the same ideals that we believe in. Hey, we ran into a snag. Here are the snag. Here's where it'll get resolved. I mean, really, I really look at that and I'm like,
it's that business 101 mistake, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes.
I'm going to give it to you in a week and it takes a month. Whereas if they said to you, I'm going to take 18 months and they gave it to you in a year, they're a hero.
Or, hey, we're up against Apple and Microsoft and Dell, and we just have a hard time. Are you cool being patient with us?
Yeah, and if they were also if they were open about it and they were upfront about it, we wouldn't even be bothered by this at all. We would still be supporting them. But also, like when you asked Zeb, you asked if we had backed it in the beginning. The reason I actually personally, I don't know if anybody else says this, but personally, I chose not to because they did the same thing with their laptops. So I just kind of expected this to happen.
Track record.
So yeah, because they have a track record of doing stuff like this. They overpromise, underdeliver, and when they do finally deliver, it's not a completed product. Like the first laptop that they started shipping out was not a completed product. So this is exactly what I expected, and that's why I didn't do it. And that's why eventually, yes, their laptops got good. And eventually, I think the phone, when the evergreen version comes out, it will be worth purchasing. I don't think that the early batches are worth purchasing. I think it's more of like, this is a new product, and I want to promote it as a good product, but I want it to be the product that they promote to be that. So, like, when the evergreen comes out, I might get it, or I might just wait for the fur one when it has 6 months later where it has a better CPU in it. I don't know. But at the same time, it's just a situation where they could have easily, they have a community that wants to be on your side. Basically, everyone in the community wants to be on your side, and you're not being upfront and honest to the community, and you're not being forthcoming, and you're not being upfront, especially when they say in their blog posts about how they're being so transparent and stuff, and it's like, you're not really being that transparent. You're being transparent about a couple things, but you're also trying to spin the way that you phrase things in your benefit.
While it may not sound like it, we actually do care and hope that this company is successful. At least I do personally.
Yeah,
we all do.
Want them to change their messaging and be actually the transparent that they talked about in their blog post and say what it is. I would totally have respected, and I think all of us do in the open source community, them coming out and just saying, we bit off more than we can chew. We're sorry. Here's some options that we're giving you. To their credit, though, I do appreciate the fact that they're not just going out there and saying, hey, this is our initial run and deal with it. You do have the option in the community.
Well, okay, you can say, hey, I really respect the fact they did that, but let's be honest, they probably just learned their lesson from the first time that they did that, and it didn't work out well.
Yeah, because the first time they did ship it without.
Yeah, the first time when they first made the laptop, that's exactly what they did. Here's the first generation, basically a prototype. Let's ship it out as a final product. Oh, people don't like that.
Yeah, it's a situation where we all want them to be successful because they're in the community that is we're basically a community that, or any company that is in this community and is genuinely wanting to be a part of it, we will back you. Yes. Because we want these products to exist.
Right. People give money to Michael, for crying out loud.
But as long as you're upfront and honest about what you're doing, I think people are going to be completely understanding. And even missing your ship dates, just don't give a ship date that if you don't know for a fact it can ship at that date. Like, for example, when they first announced it, they said January 2019, and then April, and then they went to Q3. But they didn't know if any of these were practical or if they even could do it. So if they said, hey, we think that it'd be somewhere between, in 2017, they should have said somewhere between 2019 and 2020. And at no point would anybody be bothered by that range, because all they have to do is say, this is how much effort it's going to take, and this is how we don't know exactly. We've never done a phone manufacturing before, so we need a bigger range. And if they did that, people would be happy. I would be happy. I would have nothing really issue about it. But it's just the way they're handling the situation is what is the bothersome.
All right. But to finish on a plus point, for those people that did give Michael money, at least you got a video on Firefox.
Love it or hate it, Chromebooks have marketed their way into academics and casual users quite successfully. In fact, I was visiting my son's school this week for lunch, and had sat down with lunch with them and then toured the classrooms. And I noticed all the fifth graders and fourth graders and third graders with all of their Chromebooks throughout the entire school. In schools, they now control close to 60% of the market in the U.S. classroom. So that shows you just how powerful their marketing has become. So now Google is setting their sights, not surprisingly at all, on enterprise customers, leveraging, of course, the Linux portion of the Chromebook, which I found really interesting here in their announcement. So Google is making some updates to support the enterprise market. In the announcement posted by their VP of Chrome OS, they stated these updates include the first Chromebook enterprise devices with an improved admin console and new developer-focused features. Together, these updates make the modern OS more accessible to every business. So a little bit of spin there, but ultimately what they're doing is they're giving security by design, they're saying, with the ability for IT admins to easily provision, monitor, and lock down devices, 24/7 year-round support for IT, Google Cloud apps, which they've had, and access to Dell's Technologies unified workspace solution to deploy secure, manage, and support virtual reality or virtually all devices, on the cloud. So at the end of that was the interesting bit of this, because I don't think it's any surprise Google's going to go after enterprise after dominating in academics, which, by the way, used to be completely dominated at one point by Apple, then by Microsoft, now by Chrome. And they say new organizations can enable managed Linux environments on Chromebooks. In beta, with tools to determine who has access, VPN support for internal files, and containers for maximum protection. This solution offers enterprises an approach to development that is genuinely cloud first. So it seems both Google and Windows are now heavily leveraging their Linux compatibility layers to their customers to break into cloud computing, administration, and of course, enterprise and business. So all of these other companies taking portions of Linux, incorporating them in, marketing it really well. And we sit here with Linux and don't market it very well at all, at least in my opinion. What do you guys think of this news?
I had a similar experience in my kid's school. I had a slightly different reaction. Sounds like you were a responsible parent. My son may or may not have said, "Dad, we have these Chromebooks. We're not allowed to take them out of school." And I went, "Really? I'm going to try to get access to your Chromebook when you're not in school? Because as long as you have your Google account, we can do that from any computer that has Chrome installed." And so, yeah, we set up Chrome and signed into his Google School account and started installing, various different Chrome apps and arranging his bookmarks and changing the theme and stuff. And he logs into school the next day and all those things sync down. And, he thought that was cool and his friends thought it was cool and his teacher didn't think it was cool. And so, yeah, no, but the point is that I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that the next generation of people are going to be judged their work. Like our generation was judged on how well we could use Microsoft Office and how well we could use, navigate Internet Explorer and stuff like that. The next generation is going to be judged on how well they can do Google Docs, how well they can create presentations inside of whatever the Impress or whatever the version of Impress that exists on Google Docs are, right? And so, and the ODF standard obviously is taking off. And so I think we would be foolish, quite honestly, to resist the proliferation of Chromebooks. They are based on Linux. Yes, they're tied to Google. Yes, there are some privacy concerns, but it is resetting the expectations for what people expect from a computer. And that is really beneficial to us as Linux users and as people that advocate for a Linux operating system, because the more things move to the cloud, the more things move into a web browser, the less valuable Mac OS and Windows becomes, because the less actual local executables there are. And once we have entered that space into where everything is working on a cloud, now we can start approaching people and say, listen, still do everything in the browser the exact same way you're doing. Instead of using Google, use Nextcloud. Instead of using Dropbox, use C-File. And we have equivalent software. I don't know why this is, but local software on Linux tends to suck compared to local software on Mac OS or Windows, right? The UIs aren't as fancy, the UIs aren't as in-depth and stuff, but when it comes to web apps, man, we take the cake and then some. You look at Cockpit, it looks amazing compared to any other graphical administration tool that Windows has. Like, it's a joke. And so I think it resets the expectations up, and they land in our favor because we have been so dominant on web for so long that all of the technologies that everybody uses, whether it's proprietary or open source, are running on top of Linux to begin with. So I don't see the Chromebook movement as a bad thing. I just think it's something that needs to be managed. Attention needs to be brought to it. And we need to constantly be reminding people right now about the privacy implications of using any cloud service, so that later we're in a position to say, this is why you should continue to use a small, light-powered computer that's just connected to the internet, but just own all the stuff that's on the other side of it.
Okay, so I was really looking forward to this section this week because I put out a plea to the community to help me. Right, so we take feedback from our listeners seriously. We also care about the feelings of each host on this show. Yeah, right. That is why the cast of this show have given me the opportunity to review this non-pixelated game. So let's just go back over that phrase, non-pixelated game.
Yes.
Now, this game is called Phantom 3D, and it's coming to Linux, and there'll be a link to it in the show notes. So Phantom 3D is perhaps the most exciting and engaging game ever to grace a PC. Now, you don't have to have a really powerful PC to play this. The game makers describe it thus. Phantom 3D is a first-person maze game inspired by survival horror genre and early 3D games. The main goal is to find the key and escape the dungeon before the time runs out, while collecting treasure items and scrolls to buy more time. Okay, so let's get back to this horror genre. That's not the type of horror that you're thinking of. For me, the horror that comes with Phantom 3D is that they've got the temerity to charge $3.99 for this. You're saying it's non-pixelated, and you know what? You're right, because it's actually a single pixel that's been cut into two, one grey, one black.
Listen, Zeb, you gave me a mission. You said we respect you, and you got the whole community to write us emails saying, do not give Zeb pixelated games again. I met the criteria. This is a 3D game.
Yes.
It's in the name.
It's a 3D game, and it's not pixelated because the
Because
single
there aren't any
pixel that it
pixels.
uses is very smooth.
Exactly. So the actual game itself is quite entertaining. The horror side, I think, there's a little white blotch that appears every now and again. I think they try and pretend that's a ghost.
No, that's
Not
the
quite
Phantom.
sure.
That's the Phantom. It's going to
Oh,
claim your
that's
soul.
the Phantom. Gotcha. Really?
It's so 3D, your monitor probably can't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I did have it widescreen, 47K, and I got lost in the maze. I mean, the mazes are amazingly complex, and it takes you hours to finish one level. But I was previously extolling the virtues of the Linux community, and they let Ryan do this to me. Where is the love, boys and girls? Get those emails coming in, else you'll never help me get out of this rabbit hole that Ryan is sending me down. Please help me. Don't let me have to review another game like this again.
You're
Really?
welcome, Zeb.
You're welcome.
It's a good game.
Last week, we talked about data privacy and how to use containers to do that. So this week, I thought it would be interesting to extend that just a little bit on getting data privacy while you're using a mobile device. Kind of fits in with the rest of the episode. So this week, we're talking about the best way to communicate from one place to another, and that is Signal. Now, Signal is a very interesting messenger that is different from Telegram. It's different than Wire. It's different than WhatsApp. It's different than Facebook secret chats, although it shares something in common with all of these, and that is the Signal protocol. Now, the Signal protocol is a very interesting piece of technology and something that is not seen basically anywhere else in encrypted messaging app, because here is the problem that we fundamentally run up against, and this is what we experience as Telegram users. You start a conversation, and what you'll notice is no matter what device you sign into, that conversation is always available. And the way that happens is because the conversation isn't necessarily encrypted with a private key that you own. It's encrypted with a private key that's stored on the server. And so the server then decrypts that message and then syncs it around to all the devices. The problem with that method is that Telegram and Telegram servers have access to your messages. So there is a second way to do that, and that is we can generate a private and public key pair. Now, the important thing to remember about encryption is this. Even if you don't understand anything else about encryption, what one key does, the other key undoes. So if I encrypt something with the public key, I can decrypt it with the private key. If I encrypt something with the private key, I can decrypt it with the public key. And that fundamental function of encryption allows us to do some very unique things. So the way that Signal Protocol works is this. Let me back up. So the other way that you can do that is you can generate a private key, and you can encrypt all of your messages, and then you can manually move that private key to all of your devices and then have access to those messages. So that would be one way to do it, but that provides an inconvenience to the user. So Signal has come up with a brilliant way to share a private key between devices, and it works something like this. You generate a private key on your phone, and you sign everything with your private key and then send it out. Other people can download your public key, and that allows them to decrypt messages and know that they actually came from you. You also can go into what they call the key store and download a key bundle for any other user, which allows you to decrypt their messages that they have sent to them. So how do we get the private key securely from one device to another? Well, Signal does something like this. When a new device is created, it generates its own set of private and public key pairs, right? Then the phone that you have your original key, and the only thing at the moment that can read all of your messages, encrypts the private key with the public key of the new device, sends that encrypted message over to the new device. it downloads it because the new device has that file that was encrypted with its public key, can now decrypt it with the private key that has never existed on the internet. And now that new device has the private key for all of the existing messages. And so we can add into the trust circle new devices without ever actually exposing that private key. So it's a really brilliant way to incorporate syncing and incorporate cloud access to all of your messages without actually ever succumbing or handing out your private key to any other service. Now, it's interesting. You might say to yourself, I don't actually believe that's secure. Well, you'd be wrong, because there is a security firm that has done a detailed analysis of the Signal protocol, and they have concluded that it's cryptographically sound. That is to say that right now there is no way that anybody can find to break this particular protocol. It's such a good protocol that a bunch of other applications, to include Facebook secret chats, and even WhatsApp has claimed that they have reinvented a similar algorithm because they didn't want to use the exact Signal algorithm, and then later actually adopted the Signal protocol. So all of these other places that are popping up, and I believe Skype has a private mode now too that is also using Signal protocol. So they all call it something else. But the original design that was designed by Open Whisper Systems is a sound cryptographical way to transmit messages from one machine to another machine, and you can rest fairly certain that nobody else is going to be able to read those messages unless they have physical access to that device. In addition, Signal also does a couple of really cool things, like they have disappearing messages, so you can have a real-time conversation over text message. The other person sees the message, they read it, and then it vanishes. And that's a fantastic way to communicate with family members or other things where you want to have a private conversation, but you don't want any log of that private conversation. And now Signal has taken one step further, and they're using that same protocol to encrypt audio and video calls. So pretty soon, we can already do it on the phone. Pretty soon, it will be available on the desktop app and on the web app. We'll be able to have WebRTC encrypted protocols with the exact same system I just described for doing text messages, except it will work for any sort of media. So that's my trick this week. If you want to do secure and private communication, Signal is definitely the way to do it. I've used them all. I've used Viber, I've used Telegram, I've used WhatsApp, I've used Skype. There is nothing better than Signal if you want the conversation to stay off the record. And by the way, don't reach out to me on Signal because I won't answer you unless there is a tiny small minuscule group of people that I'm communicating with on Signal. And if I haven't talked to you, I'm not responding to anybody else on Signal, because I cannot let it become the next Telegram where it just becomes a public way for everybody to reach out to you. To me, that Signal is my private messenger.
Nice.
So that all sounds really technically brilliant. So I go along, I download Signal. Is it just a matter of 1, 2, 3, click, done?
Get this, Seb. You download Signal. It generates your private and public key pairs. You add a new device and you say, I want to add this device. What do? It says, take a picture of the QR code that's showing on your device. And you look at your device and there's a QR code. You hold it up and take a picture of it, and boom, now that key exchange has occurred because it's encoding the public key inside of that. Encoding the public key inside of that QR code, which the first phone then uses to encrypt the private key to send to the new machine.
So if I then want to use that to communicate with my wife, what do I do on my wife's phone?
She just installs Signal, so as far as it will automatically take care of downloading your wife's public key from it's called a key bundle, and it will automatically download her key bundle from the central repository, which just contains the public key. Obviously, your private key is secure, but if you want to take it one extra step and you say, I don't even really trust that whole public key exchange thing. That's not cool. I want to do it myself. Well, you can. You go into Signal, you click on key, it will show you what the hash of the key is, and you can sit there and compare F1573755FB197. You can compare your wife and her phone and say, okay, yep, they absolutely match. Or you can compare that via email or whatever form you want to authenticate that key, you can do it, to include sitting in person and just reading it side by side, which is what my wife and I did.
And the structure of how you also, if you want to communicate with someone and it uses your phone directory base. Not really, you don't have to use your directory as long as you know their phone number. When you sign up for Signal, you use your phone number to create the account, and then as long as you have access to their number, you can use them on Signal.
Right. So you're talking about the public key store, which contains the key bundle, is identified with the phone number. So if you just want to have a conversation, like let's say you want to have a conversation with Michael, if you type in his phone number, it's going to look on the Signal server to see if there's a key bundle for Michael's phone number. If there is, it automatically downloads it to your phone.
All right. So here we have a company that's made something so technically brilliant, but then they thought, hang on a minute, how do we make this easy for the end user?
Bingo. And they did.
So our tip and trick of this week was sent by a community member, Richard or Chet from the community. He actually sent in a video, and we're going to play that in a little bit. But first, he says, "Hi, gents. Just a short 5-minute video with 2 quick and fun Linux tips I stumbled upon that you and the community may enjoy." So he said that he's so sorry, you may need to edit this. We're going to edit it, so it's not going to be that long in the actual video. But essentially, what he said is, here's the video.
Hey, Ryan and Michael and Zeb and Noah, how's everybody doing in the Destination Linux community? The tip that I want to show you today is dynamic wallpaper. I'm not talking about actual like wallpaper changer or anything like that, like Variety or something like that. So I'll show you Variety if you're not familiar with it. What Variety does is you're able to change wallpapers. You know, you could set it to pull from different sources, different sites, that kind of thing, or you could just set it on your own folder, and you could it'll scroll through it in whatever duration you set it as, or you could just hit next on the wallpapers. And that's not what I'm talking about today. What I wanted to show you is something called live wallpapers or dynamic wallpapers, and you can get it right here. This is KDE Plasma 5. If you go over here to your wallpaper section here and go to get new plugins, it's called either Smart Video Wallpaper, Dynamic Wallpaper, Animated Video Wallpaper. There's a couple different ones, but what it is you could change this from image to video, and then you could change, you just put in any video, you download it from YouTube or whatever, and now you have a live or dynamic wallpaper. I thought that was pretty cool. I stumbled upon that a little while ago, and some people at work had commented on it and thought I was actually running video games, because if you go here, some of the wallpapers that I had were Star Citizen, and it looks kind of like a video game. It's animated and has some really cool things. So you don't want to get in trouble at work. You don't want to be running something like Star Citizen at work or something like that. But there's some cool little videos that you can grab online and have a live or dynamic video backdrop or video wallpaper. That's just my quick tips. Hopefully you enjoy them and get some use and fun out of using Linux. I really enjoy the show. I've been a long time listener and probably been running Linux now for about 20 years. So really hope you enjoy this video, and thanks a lot, and have a great day.
Wow, that sounds really good. So this wallpaper, I can have like a little video going on. So Ryan, I can have Phantom 3D as my wallpaper now.
All of your dreams have been answered, Zeb. This is why I gave you that game. You thought I was being mean to you, but now we have Community Tip that has taken the game to a whole new level. Because it's so graphically not intensive, you literally probably could turn it into a wallpaper. So there's that. I'm
going to do it while we're chatting. You carry on, guys. I'm away.
Exactly. Well, this is really cool. If you like to have a dynamic wallpaper is a really cool idea, and especially with a video thing. And there's being able to just go into your Plasma settings and then changing it is really interesting. I think there's other DEs that have the ability to do it. I don't know off the top of my head which ones do, but if you are a Plasma user, then you can check out the Smart Video Wallpaper plugin and other stuff to get this to work. And I think you can also do it on your login screen, not just your wallpaper. So if you want to have a different video playing on your login screen, you can do that as well.
I loved his beautiful wallpaper he showed off in the video. Star Citizen, aquarium, a cherry tree blossom kind of dropping the
that was cool.
Petals down. It was pretty cool. So, I mean, we've all played with those type of things in the past. They kind of went away. Because of battery power, usually, especially on your laptop, you don't really want to use live wallpapers and anything that's going to take extra power. But on the desktop, it's kind of a perfect thing to have there running in the background, especially if you have a system that you're not afraid it's going to lower any performance for or anything. Because it does take some background task processes to run a live wallpaper. So make sure you have a system that can handle it.
Yeah.
A big thank you to each and every one of you for watching or listening to Destination Linux. We love our patrons and Ko-fi supporters. So I just want to give a special shout out, deal with it, Noah, for all of your support. We do a live show every week for our patrons. So come join us if you want to be a part of the show. You can join on Patreon for just $1, and that's darn near free. Also, we have new tiers that we've set up to get additional perks, which is awesome out there. And remember, on September 15th, the big announcement, everyone gets to see the amazing show we put together, raw, unedited. Noah, you've talked about this before. Spend the most amount of money, get the greatest show.
That's not what I said, but I mean that's close.
Close enough.
We are on Ko-fi. I have my cup of Ko-fi right here, and we would love it if you buy us a cup of Ko-fi. Now, if that sounds weird and doesn't make any sense to you, we'll just ask Ryan about it. He'd be happy to help you. You get the same perks as Patreon if you buy us a cup of Ko-fi. We broadcast various different things and talk about things, and we say exactly what we think, and you don't have to worry about us selling you a bag of schmoozle. It's if we say it, you can trust it. And the reason is because we are only beholden to you, the audience. Check that out, and make sure to head over to destinationlinux.org, where you can find all the ways to support us. At the end of the day, honestly, we don't really care how you support us. Just give us money and let us keep doing the show. We would love to have you as a listener.
Wow, no, nailed it.
Get back to us. Let us know whether or not you agree. Is it coffee or Ko-fi? Let us know in an email, and we'll set Noah right once and for all. So contact us at destinationlinux.org. And if you can't find that, you can go to comments at destinationlinux.org and send us that email. Let us know your tips and tricks. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we're doing wrong. And don't forget to do it in video mode as well, because I'm pretty sure there are still a couple of packages of swag that could be coming your way if you are one of the first 10 people to send us in a video.
And if you want more content, the fun doesn't stop here. We also have our own channels that you can check out. So, for example, you can find Ryan at youtube.com/DOSGeek, where he'll fill your brains on hardware, software, and all things Linux. You can find Zeb at youtube.com/ZebedeeBoss, where you'll find him playing some games in his Zebedee Gaming YouTube channel. And you might find him doing an occasional Gentoo installation or how-tos like that. And you can find my content at tuxdigital.com, where I do a weekly in-depth Linux GNUs podcast, the This Week in Linux podcast, and other Linux-related content, including that video about Firefox. And you can find Noah at the AskNoahShow.com, where he hosts a weekly talk radio show at 6 p.m. Central on Tuesdays, so you can join him, and he'll answer all your Ko-fi pronunciation questions.
Also, we don't have any sort of weird things like GNUs. You know, we just speak normal. So if you
Right.
want to do,
He's not fun and creative. I get it. Yep.
Yeah, like that smash button.
And you're right, Noah. Like that smash button and share the show on social media. And everybody have a great week, and remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Bye-bye.
September 15th. Be there.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Nice.